Hi everybody, how are you doing? I hope you're doing absolutely amazing. I would like to say happy Friday, and I would like to say thank you to each and every single subscriber that I have. Thank you for every like, thank you for every comment. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. I wish you guys all the best, and I'm sending you good vibes all day long. Let's get into, I believe it's part 7. Let me check. Yes, part 7 of The Alley by Mingo Rubio Jr., read by his daughter, Natalie Rubio. All right, so let's set a timer. Oh, it's perfect. It's about to be right on the dot. We'll do 20 minutes. I'll probably do another 20 minutes after because I love my hair. What do you guys think of the straight hair? You like it? Let me know. All right, let's see how long until this minute comes. We got 30 seconds to kill, so we do it right on the minute. Water. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you're doing amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Okay. The Alley. Mingo Rubio Jr. All right, here we go. The creature immediately turned its attention to her, and for a few seconds I lost them in a cloud of dust. Then yelling and screaming followed shortly after, as the villagers used their spears to stab and thrust. I lay there just trying to clear my head, still in a daze. Then I saw its shadow in the moonlight. It was big. I had to get to my wife, so I tried to make my way. Then I grabbed my leg. It felt like a snapped twig. Suddenly, I heard what sounded a lot like thunder, simultaneously with some bright lights flashing. I felt so helpless because of the state I was under, and from what I saw, the beast was still thrashing. Most of the men were now engaged in the battle. I lay there motionless, with a ringing in my ears. I could see them as they fought in the shadows. I later found out that they had silver-tipped spears. I heard more shots being fired, but I couldn't move. Suddenly, the creature fell and let out a terrible cry. My wife suddenly emerged, and then she fell too, as I quickly crawled to her to see if she was all right. Then I said, "Why would you risk your life for me?" She said, "I had to help. I couldn't just stand there." Then I noticed that she was struggling to breathe. She had been badly bitten. Blood was everywhere. I held her in my arms. The love of my life was dying. I said, "Don't you die on me, girl. I can't make it alone." She looked at me and said, "You're going to be fine." Before passing out, she said, "Please take me home." They carried us to the medicine man's little shack, as the others cut up the beast with a silver sword. They added wood to the fire they had sustained. Then they took the beast and hurled it into the pit. Everyone stayed until only the ashes of it remained. They all said, "That's the only sure way to get rid of it." My wife was unconscious, but she was still bleeding. Then the old medicine man rushed into the room. He had a container of mud that he was kneading. Then I asked him, "What the heck are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to cover her wounds with this mud." I asked him, "What's the purpose of this application?" He said, "This helps draw the poison from the blood. It also thickens the blood to slow down circulation." Then one of the women brought me a cup of tea. The medicine man had me drink the whole cup. He was tending to my wounds when I fell asleep. As I slept, all of my wounds were bandaged up. When I awoke, he was tending to my wife's wounds, as some of the villagers were beating their drums. Then I heard other drums far across the lagoon. I asked, "What does it mean?" He said, "Help comes." Apparently, this is their method of communication. I had been here all this time and I wasn't aware. By beating on a drum, they can reach civilization, because in a matter of hours, a chopper was there. At the time we were here, when we heard the drums, they were communicating like the Pony Express. They had already known where we had come from. This I had finally realized, but only after our distress. I asked, "How soon will you know if the mud works?" He said, "It takes a few minutes for it to take effect. After an hour, if she doesn't begin to shake and jerk, then we'll know for sure if she's been infected." I attentively watched him, and it seemed rather odd. I said, I have never seen this technique used before. He said, it works very well, but you can also use sod. I asked him, can you teach me? I want to know more. He said, what I know took a lifetime for me to learn, but I'll answer all of your questions before you go. I asked, so why was the creature cut up and burned? He said, this way it can't be dug up by any wild animals. I asked, why was the sword they used silver tipped? Even the spears were tipped, from what I could tell. He said, it weakens the evil creature from the crypt. Even the bullets in your gun were tipped as well. I said, silver-tipped bullets in my gun? No, they're not. He said, Colt 45 short revolver? Well, they are now. I said, are you telling me that you fired those shots? You actually tipped the bullets in my gun? But how? He said, remember I borrowed it to have it cleaned? I had replaced the tips of your bullets right then. I asked him, but why? How could you have foreseen? He said, it's just a matter of time before it happens. He said, I did it to protect you. Don't be concerned. You're no stranger to this. You should have known. Take from this experience what you've just learned. You can't kill the beast with just sticks and stones. He said, remember, there are two elements involved. One is part animal or creature. The other is part man. But throughout history, this creature has evolved. There is something about it that I don't understand. Suddenly, our conversing was frightfully interrupted when my wife screamed and started to convulse. Just when I thought my wife was better, she erupted. I held her to try to calm her down, but she repulsed. Suddenly, the medicine man called for some help. Then 4 men rushed in quickly and held her down. I said, wait a minute, I can hold her down by myself. As soon as I said that, she threw me to the ground. She started screaming and shaking uncontrollably. This was an episode, something that I knew so well. Then she looked at my face. I said, baby, it's me. I didn't believe it. My wife was now under a spell. Then he quickly approached her, smoking a cigar. He took a puff and then blew the smoke in her face. This was the strangest thing I'd ever seen by far. And what happened next left me totally amazed. Almost in an instant, her jerking and shaking quit. As I sat there for a second, not knowing what to do, then I asked, what kind of cigar is that? What's in it? He said, man, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Suddenly, the room was filled with a cloud of smoke. I asked, did you also learn this one from the ancient? Then he looked at me. Just as he took another toke, he said, no, I actually learned this one by accident. Then I interrupted Mr. Kim and say, okay, now I see. Mr. Kim said, kid, what the hell are you talking about? I said, that's how you got hooked on smoking weed. He said, that's something I wouldn't doubt. But let me get back to my story. I'm almost done. So let me continue to tell you what happened next. As the men released my wife, she looked stunned. What I just witnessed wasn't in any so-called text. Then he gave my wife some sort of herbal sedative. He said, I gave her much medicine. She must sleep. I asked him, is she all right? Is my wife going to live? He said, no, she was bitten. The poison is too deep. I said, some of the men were also hurt in the brawl, some of them badly cut. What will happen to them? He said, they weren't bitten, they were just clawed. Only with its bite can it infect you with its venom. As we waited anxiously for the helicopter to arrive, I just sat there asking him questions for a few hours. I said, there must be a way that she can survive. He said, yes, but I do not have that kind of power. He gave me a pouch filled with some sort of tea. He said, give it to her and she'll feel no more pain. I asked, it'll heal her? He said, no. Didn't you hear me? Then I realized what it was. I said, are you insane? Then I grabbed the pouch and threw it on the floor. I said, you want me to kill my wife, put her to death? He picks it up, then hands it to me once more. He said, only suffering remains. That's all that's left. There is no cure yet for the evil that resides within. The creature is merely part man and part animal, but man must taste death before this evil can begin. So what is there left to save, if anything? It's the soul. I recorded what I learned from the medicine man, but he too reached a level that he couldn't exceed. I said, how can this be possible? The cure is at hand. He said, there's something else that's eluded me. Mr. Kim said, all the years of research that I've done, I have used many remedies that were originally his. Though I've narrowed the missing link down to one. It took a little kid to help me figure it out what it is. Suddenly, our conversation was interrupted again when we heard the chopper high above his shack. It was heading for a safe spot to land near the glen. Then I told him, someday I'm going to come back. And as the helicopter landed, the villagers cheered, and before the medicine man and I said goodbye, he told me, don't tell anyone what happened here. Outsiders would just come and disrupt our paradise. As we were boarded, I vowed to him my secrecy. Then I gave thought as we ascended into the air. How could something so good end in catastrophe? What started as a dream turned into a nightmare. When we landed, I contacted Dr. Ralphie Madrid. Through the years, we had become good friends. I asked him if he could do more than what he did. He said, I have a new treatment that I recommend. I still consider it to be in the experimental phase, but it's highly regarded because it's so advanced. I said, to save my wife, I will do whatever it takes. Experimental phase or not, I must take the chance. He immediately had her body put into an ice bath. He said, this will help slow down her metabolic rate, which keeps the infection from spreading too fast. But if she's to live, the infection must be eradicated. Endless hours of testing were done, day after day, and before we knew it, we had been there a week. In that span of time, my wife was dwindling away. She was hooked up to IVs, but nothing solid to eat. One day after testing the blood and the tissue samples, Ralphie said, I can't kill the infection. It's too strong. The medicine man was right. Death was inevitable. I wasn't willing to accept it, but I knew it all along. The ice bath worked, but a cure could not be found, and the result of that would leave him in distress. He said, I'm really sorry. I know that I let you down. I said, don't be sorry. God knows you did your best. Then I asked, is it possible to resuscitate my wife? He asked why. Then he looked at me and he knew. I said, to tell her that I love her just one more time. He said, yes, of course, but only for a minute or two. But understand, even though she's heavily sedated, if I bring her out too long, she'll have an episode. And if she does, it's possible that she will fibrillate. Cardiac arrest may occur, or her heart will explode. His staff took her out of the ice and put her on a bed. Then Ralphie gave my wife a small dose of adrenaline. After coming to, she opened her eyes and said, Is it you, or are you part of the dream that I was in? I couldn't hold it in anymore as tears started to flow. I just stood there holding her cold body close to me. Then she said, honey, don't let me suffer, let me go. And what I could use right now is some hot tea. Then it occurred to me what she was talking about. She said, I too was listening to the medicine man. I know what he has told you concerning the pouch. She looked into my eyes and said, I understand. I asked one of the nurses to prepare the brew. As my wife and I held each other, we both cried. She said, life has been an adventure being with you. I know that you did all you could. I know that you tried. The tea was now ready as I held it within my grip, as my last moment with her was rapidly shrinking. Then I kind of panicked as I held the cup to my lips. She said, don't you do it. What are you thinking? I said, I don't want to live without you all by myself. She said, don't worry, you'll always have me near. Promise me to dust off my pictures on the shelf. I smiled and said, I will, as she wiped away my tears. She started shaking. Our time was coming to an end. A nurse wanted to help her, but Ralphie said, wait. My wife grabbed my hand and said, I'll see you again. I'll be the one wearing a smile standing at the gate. She said, I want you to promise me one more thing, as I reluctantly held the cup of tea up to her mouth. I know finding a cure has always been your dream. Promise me you won't stop until you figure it out. I made her that promise. Then I told her, I love you. Sadly, I knew that we only had a few seconds left. She struggled to breathe. Death would be here soon. She whispered, I love you too, with her last breath. Her body was now reacting to the poison tea. Tears ran down her face as I looked into her eyes. Then she slowly closed them and went to sleep. I held it for a few seconds. Then I kissed her goodbye. Dr. Ralphie saw that I needed a few minutes alone. He said, I'm here to help in whatever you may need. I said, I'm going to need help getting my wife home, and I would appreciate anything that you can do for me. I had a funeral. All of our friends and family went, but first I had informed them of how she had died. I told everyone that she had died in a traffic accident. The truth was too far-fetched to believe, so I lied. About a month or so later, Dr. Ralphie contacted me. He told me that he had noticed something strange. He said, I have found something I just can't believe. Her tissue had been replaced, somehow changed. What he had just discovered sent chills up my spine. Some sort of weird transformation was taking place. That's why most of the victims had lost their minds. I thought surely it would stop, though, in the grave. He said, what we have just found, we can't dismiss. I said, hold on a second. What are you talking about? He said, come on, we can't just walk away from this. We have to know for sure. We have to dig her out. Though I was reluctant, I knew this had to be done. We would have to involve the authorities, though. We made up a good reason for them to come. He had a friend at the Center for Disease Control. Dr. Ralphie told them that she was under his care and that my wife had died of a bad case of the flu. I just couldn't believe how fast CDC was there when he said it's a rare disease or something new. They did all the digging until the casket was clear, and then Ralphie had a little chat with his friend. Then his friend said, okay, you take over from here, after Ralphie secretly slipped him a few Benjamins. We waited until we were all alone in the cemetery. Then we opened the casket, and I said, is that her? She had transformed into something really scary. My wife was turning into one of those creatures. Suddenly, I felt lightheaded, and then I fell down. What I was looking at hit me like a ton of bricks. I kept looking at this thing as I sat on the ground. And then I told Ralphie, I think I'm going to be sick. Then he helped me to my feet. He too was shaken. I said, get her out, man. So he jumped into the hole. He said, you know this is quite a risk we're taking. I said, if we hurry up and bury it, no one will know. I could do nothing to help as we got her body out. I could do nothing to help as he got her body out. I was still mending from the broken leg that I had. But Ralphie was a strong young man, big and stout. He could handle it all by himself, but I still felt bad. He said, let's put her body in the back of my van. Now that she is out of the crypt, we'll be on our way. And for a second, I remembered the medicine man. I looked at Ralphie and asked, what did you just say? He repeated it, and suddenly it became clear to me. I was shocked that I hadn't figured this out before. It was there all this time, all throughout its history. There was a metamorphosis that I had ignored. It made sense now, all of the victims that had died, but we didn't burn them, we buried the bodies instead. I couldn't figure out how the beast rematerialized. The infection still lived though the victim was dead. Suddenly I remembered the small village again, and what the medicine man there had said to me. He was trying to tell me, but I couldn't comprehend. Now I understand, only after suffering this tragedy. Then Ralphie said, so what are we going to do now? I said, I'm not sure. I've never had a creature before. We'll have to keep it hidden and study it somehow. Then I guess we have to let nature take its course. Now that we know how the creature is regenerated, we must find out exactly what triggers this effect. There's no official record as to how it was created. We'll just have to wait and see what happens next. We decided to put the corpse in a secluded room, and then Ralphie placed it on an old operating cart. Suddenly, I caught a whiff of my wife's perfume. She was wearing it that day. She captured my heart. Ralphie sensed that I was getting a little emotional, maybe because he saw me wipe away my tears. He said, you need some rest. Why don't you go, and I'll finish whatever needs to be done in here. So I took another look at what used to be my wife. It was so hairy, but still had some of her features. Honestly, I'd never seen anything like it in all my life. Reality was starting to set in. My wife was a creature. I just stood there looking at it, and I went into a daze. I started thinking of the things that we wanted to do. I was so deep in thought, I just stared into space. Then he asked, are you okay? What's wrong with you? Then I gave thought of all the years in our vocation. We had never really experienced a personal attack. We visited many places that had similar situations, and I just realized most of them were after the fact. Though we had our skirmishes and a few close calls, it was always someone else that had been killed. I had my own story now that I could add to them all, now that the blood of my wife has also been spilled. So I pieced together all of the possible similarities, and I already knew that it only happened at night. Also, that the moon attributed to this abnormality, and all of the victims had died after receiving its bite. Just then, Mr. H said, hey, would you look at that? as he pointed in the direction of the lower valley. I said, "What do you see? What are you looking at?" He said, "It's the callejon, or what you call the alley." Mr. Kim said, "Where's the cemetery? Is it close by? I want to see something, so we will go there first. We'll check the plots of people that recently died. I want to see the full extent of this terrible curse." Mr. H parked on the road in front of the old pantheon. Mr. Kim grabbed his bag and started walking around. There were so many plots and so many headstones, and there were a lot of empty holes in the ground. He asked Mr. H, "How well do you know this place?" Mr. H said, "Well enough to take you on a little tour." Mr. Kim said, "Let's get to it. There's no time to waste. I don't want to be here too long, that's for sure." Mr. H told him the history of the surrounding area, of the aqueduct, the preserve, and the reservoir, and of the abandoned homes due to the hysteria. There used to be a lot of people living there before. The land behind the reservoir was a wildlife preserve. It was huge. It actually covered over 100 square miles. It had so much wildlife that people could observe, sort of like the Everglades, from birds to reptiles. But that too was abandoned, and the town let it go. People used to go there to just hang out and relax. And then all of a sudden, things got out of control. Tourists had gone in there and never came back. Mr. Kim looked around, and then he removed his hat. He nodded and said, "It makes perfect sense to me." He said, "It's at home, living in its natural habitat. It has shelter, water to drink, and it has plenty to eat. But once it tastes humans, it'll want something else. One thing is certain, though, this will not go away. When will this happen again? I don't know myself, but sooner or later, it will search for more prey." He turned and looked in the direction of the aqueduct. As he looked it over, he kind of marveled at its size. He said, "This is a big task we're about to conduct. I'm kind of nervous. I don't know about you guys." I'm kind of nervous too. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Thank you so much for joining me for reading 20 minutes of my dad's book. I'm really grateful for each and every one of you. Please comment and let me know what you think of it so far. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, universe. Thank you, God. And thank you, YouTube. Bye, guys.